Welcome back to the Cirque Series. The last race was in Alyeska. The Alaskan mountains hosted the season's toughest race yet, with nearly 4,000 feet of climbing and only 6 miles. Olympic cross-country skier Novi McCabe proved her fitness by taking the top step of the podium in her first Cirque Series race of the season. Anchorage local Claire Rhodes showed the value of the home field advantage on the Alaskan terrain, finishing in second. Jamie Bruce's consistent fight for the Cirque Series overall was complemented with a fantastic third-place result. Jordyn finished 9th after a tough race on tired legs. Her top 10 finish moved her into 7th in the overall series standings. This week, we travel back to Utah for the 4th race of 2023. Alta is home to the first ever Cirque Series event and marks the halfway point of the season.
Having the 3-week gap between Alaska and this Utah race has been kind of tricky. I've enjoyed having a little bit of time to rest, which I feel like I haven't had yet this season. And for this being my first season of racing, it feels like a lot. It feels long, and that's not something I'm used to. I've kind of enjoyed having that extra week to kind of reset a little bit, but it also has kind of thrown me off because now I'm like, back to racing.
The course covers 7.1 miles with 2,500 feet of elevation gain and loss. A steady climb takes runners to the top of Mount Baldy before a screaming descent back to the base area.
On paper, I've been hovering around 7th and 10th, and that's kind of what's expected of me right now in this first season racing, but I know where I want to be, and I know that it's farther up than 10th place. When we were in Alaska, I started farther up at the start line, and that's something that I think I've talked about where I'm not super comfortable with that, but I'm trying to get used to putting myself in that position because a lot of energy is wasted otherwise. I think I did a pretty good job of that in Alaska, and then in Alta, I thought I was in the 3rd row, but watching the video back, I was not in the 3rd row. I was way farther back than I thought I was. And I didn't know that until going down the first straightaway and going up the fire road. I realized, I don't recognize, the people around me, and the couple girls that I normally run with, I don't see them. I don't know where they are. So I think that's kind of when I realized, I'm farther back and I kind of need to kick it into gear a little bit harder than I thought I needed to. As soon as I realized that, I started getting a little panicky. I feel like maybe that's what triggered the anxiety in that race of just like that quick moment of you did something, quote unquote wrong. Like you started farther back than you were supposed to. It's so funny how that works. It just starts as like the smallest little anxiety cue and then spirals. Going up that fire road, it started as that and then, kind of turned out to be a whole thing later in the race. Coming from soccer too, if anything started to go sideways, you had an entire team that was in the same situation as you but had the same goal. So you were able to kind of redirect your focus of like, okay, I really need to step it up or do X, Y, and Z to make sure that we get the job done. Whereas with running, it is all on you. It is all raw, unfiltered, like it's on you. There is no bullshit. That's something that I love about the sport. That's my favorite part about it, but it's also, in my opinion, the hardest part about it because it is so self-reflective and you internalize everything. That headspace, that mental aspect is the biggest part of racing, and it's something that I'm trying to learn how to deal with, how to navigate through, but it's really hard.
4.5 miles of climbing take the runners to the top of Mount Baldy, the high point of the course at 11,068 feet. Only 2.5 miles separate the top runners from the finish line.
The biggest challenge in this race was just that mental headspace going up the fire road. And that seems to be a consistent theme throughout these races for me right now, is the mental aspect of it has been really tricky. Just trying to navigate that anxiety and minimize it, or not even minimize it, but just process it so that it's out of my head and I can get over it and, deal with the race rather than the mental part. I feel like I haven't had that chance yet to actually just race and run. It's all been about the mental side of this. It's funny because I was talking to my friend Carly about having such high expectations for myself going into this series, and she was like, Jordyn, first of all, this series is stacked. The ladies that are competing in this, they have experience of running in college. They, compete on the US team or the Dutch team, or they're running at Worlds. Like, they're high level athletes, or they're going to the Olympics. Like, that's so cool to think about. And so putting that into perspective, it's like, more of an ego thing of like, I want to be there already, but I'm also just starting. So I think that's also why I'm expected to be between that 7 to 10 placement range, which, shoot, I guess when I put it into that type of perspective, I guess I'm kind of okay with that coming into this as like a first year runner. Like the entire climb up, it was just me constantly going back and forth in my brain of like, okay, you're fine, just like chill out. And it got to the point where I was like, okay, you're not even racing anymore, like just go for a run. And I kept going back to that, and it took me up until we got to the top to finally like not feel that like in my chest and like that panic breathing again. This week, I forgot I had a race this weekend, and up until last night, I was like, oh yeah, I'm racing this weekend, and it kind of started to feel like soccer games again, where it was just like another thing that you did on the weekend, but it didn't feel as much pressure. And then it's like I started putting pressure on it this morning, and then when we got here, and I don't know why I keep doing that. There's literally zero pressure. It's all coming from me, but I'm like, how do I get that out of my head? I got 11th, and in the overall, that pushed me back from 7th to 8th. So now I'm sitting in 8th, which, obviously no one wants to go backwards. That sucks, but it's all a part of this. It's all a part of learning. And so I think going into the Targhee race, it, lights fire under your butt just a little bit more. So maybe that's okay. So even though I'm not super psyched about that, it is what it is, and I'm just looking forward to Targhee next weekend.
A tough race moved Jordyn back into 8th in the overall series standings. Megan Drake's points lead is being challenged by Janelle Link's consistent, strong performances. Jamie Bruce's 4th place finish in today's race moved her into a podium position in the overall standings. Join us next week at Grand Targhee Resort in Wyoming for the 5th round of the 2023 Cirque Series. Thank you to our sponsors for making these videos possible. Check the video description for more information on each of our partners.